Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Molten Modular DIY. Today, I've got something a little bit different. Look at the state of this. This is a new case from Befaco. They're putting it out there as a DIY buildable case. They give you the shell, the chassis, if you like, and then everything else you have to put together yourself in order to build it in. I don't have any of the marketing materials for this, so I can't exactly describe you what it is. We're going to learn what it is as we go along. But on first inspection, I would say it's a 7U, which is going to be important. Eurorack modular case. It looks to be about 104 HP wide, I think. On the back, you've got all of these inputs and outputs. So this is definitely a reflection on something like the IntelliGel pallet case. That's very interesting. So this could be like a standalone modular system which then integrates with other stuff with your ins and outs on the back. It has undoubtedly a 1U row, which is very interesting because Befaco have just got into doing 1U stuff. And that's also something that I'm very excited about trying out and incorporating. So I don't really have a 1U row in any of my other cases at the moment. And so it's going to give me an opportunity to try that kind of thing out. But as I say, I can't give you a list of specs because I don't know what they are. So what we appear to have is a metal steel chassis. It's got this desk saver kind of plastic top, and it's like interesting. I don't know. Obviously a dust cover, which is brilliant, but it also, you think about, well, maybe if I'm going to take this out somewhere, do I really want everyone to be able to see into my thing? But then also it doesn't have a handle, so perhaps it's not really geared towards taking out to a gig. Maybe it's more geared towards staying in the studio. There's no reason you can't put it in a bag, obviously. But so, these are the thoughts about it that I'm going to share as we go. I kind of dig in the Velcro thing, which holds it all together, which is simple. You're not having to worry about clasps or hinges which are going to break or snap or have any problem. You've just got this top that goes on and a lovely little bit of Velcro to hold it all together. Nice. So the lid just sits on top. Look at that. It's got a nice bit of overhang. So it's on there pretty solidly. As I say, it doesn't hinge or latch. There's no magnets or anything special keeping it on. You keep it on with the strap if you want to, but if you're assuming this is going to sit in your studio like this in a console style, then that will just sit on top, keeping the dust off. Brilliant. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I'm going to put that to one side. And then all we got is this bent piece of metal. Some interesting screws here, which is something that we'll come to later. So I imagine what we're going to be doing is going to be building the power bus that goes inside. We're going to be building the back panel, which has all the connections on there, and then putting it together, powering it up, see if it does stuff. That's going to be very cool. I had a slight problem on arrival in that I've lost a couple of studs or something that went through here. They didn't seem to stay in, but I do have them. They were still in the box and in the bag, and I will get them back in there somehow, and if there's a special way of doing it, I'll let you know. But otherwise, it got to me all in one piece. So, are we going to need this bit? I don't know if we need this bit yet. Let's have a look at what else came in the box. Okay, so I've got a box of things. This appears to be... Oh, look, there's some wires. Some wires in a kind of a electrical kind of way. That's a little bit different. Only meaning different in terms of, I've been building modules which are just building modules, yeah? As opposed to bits of electrical equipment. There's a whole load of... Oh yeah, I'm going to have to probably solder a whole load of power headers. That's exciting. Oh look, there's more power headers. Yeah, so those are definitely a thing we're going to be getting into, I think, at this point. Good, those are my two studs that came out of the bottom. I'm sure they will present themselves as important at some point. So let's put that to one side for the moment. So I then got an HP ruler. That's interesting. And I've got this big chunky thing. Yeah, interesting. Big PCB. This, I think, is just the power supply. Yeah, that's the power brick. Stick that to one side for the minute. And then here, these must be the rails. There we go. Threaded nuts and all that. Oh, that's two together. Interesting. Right. So the build guide I've got is this one here on paper, because it's not officially out. I can't. There's not one online at the moment that I can access. So I'm just going to go straight with this. We're gonna run through it, see what happens, and hopefully at the end of the day we're going to come out with a fabulous new case that I can put more modules in. Hurrah! Hurrah for more modules. That's fantastic. So enjoy, it says. Hurrah! Be gentle, triple check all steps, of course. So let's start with the trolley bus. What on earth is a trolley bus? Does it matter? Probably not. No. So solder the black boxes, the IDC connectors. You need to place a connector in the edge of the board, so each line pin ends up at each side of the PCB. I beg your pardon? Ensure the black triangle on each connector matches the white triangle on the silk screen. Connectors and notches will end up facing up. It will help you placing one connector and then soldering one of the legs, making sure the pins are aligned on the pads. Using flux as advised will help big time. Right. Okay, well, I mean, let's open this and see if any of that makes any kind of sense. So we have this here, and we have this big chunk. Trolley bus. Look, it says trolley bus on it. It says trolley bus. Good. Right. So put that one away for the minute. So this thing here is called a trolley bus, and also an HP ruler. Right. So I have no clue. Right, so the black boxes. So we've got black boxes there. So I mean, these look like black boxes. I mean, the one here appears to have 10 pins, and these have 16. But these do match up rather nicely with this. But how does this work? Okay, solder the IDC connectors. I mean, let's assume that these are IDC connectors. You need to place a connector in the edge of the board, so each line of the pins ends up at each side of the PCB. What does that mean? Does it mean it goes across it like that? Is that what it's talking about? Ensure the black triangle each connector matches with the white triangle. So here's a white triangle. There's a black triangle. See that on there? So black triangle, white triangle. So I think these actually fit like that. I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening, because those holes aren't big enough for that to go through, and that wouldn't make any sense. So it has to go like that. You need to place a connector in the edge of the board, so each line of pins ends up on each side. So I think that's right. I'm going to go with that. I think that's right. Okay, so one of the reasons that Befaco asked me to build this thing is because it gives me the opportunity to stumble through all of the things that perhaps don't quite make sense in the manual, or perhaps with people of less engineering experience like myself might find a bit troublesome. So this first bit is a little bit troublesome. First of all, the picture in the manual doesn't have the right number of pins on here, and I think it's really important that you show the correct component above anything else. So it's a 16-pin one, shrouded 16-pin black box, and it does tell you that it needs to go on the edge, but it doesn't feel very very clear, and you're left a little bit, am I doing this? Because you don't usually solder things on the edge of PCBs. You don't. That's just not my experience. But that makes absolute sense when you look at it, because it fits nicely with the pad, and that is definitely what's going to be going on, I think. I'm just trying to think to myself, what's the best way to do it? Is it to put all of these on and then solder, or is it to put one on, solder it, check it, solder it, etc, etc, etc? I'm not sure, because you're going to want it to be straight and lined up on both sides, but then if you put a whole load on and then put it down, it's going to stay pretty much. And you could do one leg on all of them, or at least one side. It's a lot of soldering. It's a lot of soldering. But the important thing is you've got your white arrow there and your black arrow there. So this notch bit is pointing up. This is the top of the board apparently. So what I'll do is I'll stick a whole load of these on. All the way along here. And then I'm going to solder one pin of them just to make sure that it's right. So what sort of angle am I going to need for this? I don't know, I just stick it down. See, they're all going to try to run away. Maybe this is not a good idea. Hey, well, you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? So maybe if I start with a middle one, then that means the board's at least going to be relatively steady. So I'm going to try to solder this one here. Yeah, the rest are just going to fall off. So I'll do it a little bit more one at a time, I think. It's going to start with this one. If I have it resting, is that going to be better or worse? Maybe what I need to do is put it up on a couple. Okay. Let's have a go. See what's going on. So I'm going to need it to be able to work on both sides, aren't I? So if I press this leg down, and then hold it on. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. So that seems like a plan. I'm going to do a whole load more, I think. So if I stick this one on here, try to do the same thing. So I hold it on and then just hold it as I remove. Try to keep that straight. That's this way around, white arrow to black arrow. Come on. Yeah. They're not perfectly straight, but that's okay. I'm not perfectly straight. Generally speaking, I'm far from perfectly straight. Okay, so I've successfully got up to the end of that, and they're not looking too bad. That end one there's a little bit wonky, but that seems to be on there okay. And then I guess, I solder both sides, I imagine. That's got to be right, isn't it? So what I'll do is I'll solder the rest of these on. There's no point in you hanging around while I'm doing all of that. And my understanding is that once you've tagged them all on there and you're happy with them being straight, solder all the way across, turn it over, solder all the way across. That has to be the way forward, I think. At this point, a lot of soldering. I'll see you on the other side. So that's that first lot all done. It's kind of interesting because you can't, or I can't at least, get my iron onto both the pin and the pad because the pin covers the pad almost entirely. So I'm just having to heat the top of the pin and then hoping that the solder flows underneath and connects the two together. It appears to be doing so, and it's actually gone on really, really easy. So there we go. It's not beautiful. It's not beautiful exactly, you can see there, but hey. So that's halfway round. Just got the other half to do now. So there you go. Look at that. That's done, I think. I don't know. It's interesting because when you start getting into power, I mean, when you're testing a circuit on a module, you don't think really about the voltage and ampage and stuff going through things. You're just testing stuff, sticking probes in it and all sorts. This is now dealing with a power supply, and that it's probably exactly the same, but the perception of it in my own mind is that, oh my goodness, I could blow myself up. So I would like it to be right. I hope it is. I hope it is. So that's all in. They're all right around the right way, as far as I can tell. So next up, we seem to have some resistors. So over here, look, over here on this part here. So we've got a little bit of things to put in there. I've got a little bag of resistors here. That's probably all going to happen all at the same time together, like, don't you think? Let's have a look. So we should have 3, which are 2K2, and 1 which is 1K. But they are not red, red, black, black, brown by any stretch of the imagination. Neither's that. So there must be some other resistors. Okay, got another bag of resistors here. Those are the ones. These are the ones. So these ones here, whatever they are something else. So I'm going to put them back into their bag. These are the ones I want. They come in the packet with the LEDs. So I've got 3 here, which should be red, red, brown, brown. Red, red, black, brown, brown. Red, red, black, brown, brown. Oh, yes, that's those. So they're the 2K2s. And this one should be browns and blacks, which it is. which is the 1K. Lovely. So these R1, 2, 3 and 4 go along here. So 1, 2 and 4. 1. These are little weeny ones. 4. It's R3. So let's solder those in quick while I'm not thinking about it. Then we can snip them off. Lovely. So on to the next page. That's exciting. So the LEDs. Place the LEDs, minding their polarity, long leg positive, short leg negative. And we just put these on. So I've got 4 of these, 4 spaces for them. Long leg positive. Now they don't have to butt up against anything, they just go in and you can solder them. Long leg positive, long leg positive, long leg positive. Good, that's very clear. I approve of the clarity of both the screen print and the instructions. That's all good. Just going to bend those out a little bit. So I'm going to solder those in. As I say, they're not pulling up against the front of a case or anything, they just can solder in place. Now the pads around the components are not particularly big, so you have to make sure you get in there to heat the pad as well as the leg to make sure that the solder runs nicely. You inevitably get a load of solder all over the end of your iron. Well, at least I do. I mean, that's my experience of it. There's probably other ways. Lovely. So 2x3 Molex connector. So solder the Molex at J3. So the 2x3 connector is this thing here. This is a 2x3 Molex connector, and as you can see, it's got bent pins at the side, and it's connecting to J2 on the board, and it just sticks out the side. There'll be one of these on the other board as well. And then we've also got the terminal block, which is this fella here, and that connects into J1 there. Now, which way round is that going to go? Facing the outside of the PCB, so this bit here where you're going to plug the wires in is going to be going to the outside, so that needs to go there. So let's see if we can solder these two bits in together without it all falling out when I turn it over. Let's have a look. Nope. Hey, look, I got the terminal block in, so I'm just gonna even that out a little bit. I'll solder that one in. That'll be a good start, and then I'll try to do the other one again in a minute. So these are nice and thick, so we're probably going to need a little bit of heat. So that's in there, nice and steady. So this one, I'm going to try and turn this over without it falling out this time. I mean, obviously you can use blue tack or tape or some other special device, some other form of magic to hold that in there, or just use your fingers and get on with it. Stop messing about. That's what I would say. Good. So that's facing out. Both of them. Yeah. That's good. Now we've got these weird blocky things. These are called DC regulators. Large DC regulators should be placed at the center of the PCB and soldered in place where the large white square silk screen indicates. So they go here, and there seems to be 3 of one and 1 of another. So there's what bit am I looking at? What they call them? If there's a 30D and a 20D, that's a 20D, 30D, 30D, 30D. So this is the 20D, and this goes on, well, I guess it's labelled here, 20D there. And they actually have different pin outs underneath, so you can't put them in the wrong bit. because they're different. Yeah, so the 20 is over here, and then you've got a row of 30, so going quite snug, which I appreciate, which means that when I turn it over, hopefully they're not all just going to fall out. That's my hope. They can only go in one way round as well because the pins are different, so you've got no problem in putting those in very confidently. And then let's see if we can just turn that over, and it's just going to work. Yes, it is. Lovely. So you solder those in as well, and it's a good one. Now these are heavy, kind of board bending sort of weight to it. Those are nicely on there. That's good. I think this board might be complete. So next page is the I/O board. How exciting! So yeah, that is looking pretty smart, I have to say. Awesome. On to the next thing. Right, the I/O board, which I'm assuming is this one. It's so joyful to have the cockerel back. Thank goodness the bird flu is over, and that my neighbours have decided to put them just there beside the shed. Fantastic. I'm loving it. Enjoying the natural flow of the organic nature that's infecting my work here. It's fantastic. But hey, here we go. So this I think is the I/O board, because it has all of the jack sockets and bits and pieces on the back, so that is definitely going to be it. It also doubles up as some extra power sockets. Look at that, which is nice. So this has got a few resistors and bits and pieces on, so it appears, and these are the yellow ones that we saw earlier. So cool, just here. So just some little bits and pieces. It's quite interesting how this whole power supply thing doesn't really have a whole lot going on. It's just feeding power in, I guess, ultimately. It's not doing anything more than that. But here we do have a few connectors, which are going to have to connect to something somewhere. I wonder how that all works. I imagine we're going to find out. Right, so resistors. What do I do with those? I threw them over somewhere here. Okay, here we go. So we need these little things. There should be two, which are 49K9s. Yellow, white, white, red, brown. Yellow, white, white, red, brown. I believe that's those two there. So this is R3 and R4. Then R1 is yellow, orange, red, red, brown. Very good colours. 43K2. And this is R1. And this last one, which is violet, green, black, red, brown, I'll believe it, is R2. Right, let's stick those in nice and simply. And then we've got this little switch here. Place and solder the mini slide switch at the position marked USB 1 source. USB 1 source. This little thing. How on earth am I going to have that? How's that going to stay in, eh? Are you kidding me? Right. See, that's an awkward thing. So I'm going to turn that over to try to solder it. Oh, I might have managed it. That's going to be slightly wobbly. Hey, just give it a go. See what happens. Do one leg. Try to balance the board. So I've now got the solder there. I'm going to sit it up straight and then remove the soldering iron. Have a look at that. See, I think I got away with that quite nicely. See, I'm such an old pro at this these days. No messing about. So the rest of these IDC connectors should have some more in the next bag. So empty these out, and it will give us all the bits we need for the I/O board. See all those there? Yeah. So I've got a whole bunch more of these that are going to go along this line here. I think. Solder the IDC connectors, small black triangle, white triangle, blah blah blah. There should be 8 of the 2x8s, and then there's also 2x5s and 2x3s. Okay, so if we do power 1 to 8, which are these ones along here, that would be a good start. So these are going to go in. See, there's our key and our black triangle with the white triangle there. That's going to fit in like so. Again, am I going to be able to turn this over? How can I best do this to keep it flat? Maybe what I'll do, in order to balance it a bit better, I'll do this one here along with 3x2, which I think is 3x2 there, and this goes there like so. If I turn these two over, at least it's going to balance quite well, is my feeling. And if those are in, then putting the rest in should hold things together a little bit, just to get some balance knocking around, because you just want it as straight as possible. Again, use tape, use sensible things like that I'm not doing, because I'm just steaming on it as simply as possible. But you know, do it as properly as you like, I would say. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to tag these in before soldering the whole lot, just to make sure they're all in the right place and we've got them all together. So with this, it's just going to be one leg. I'm applying pressure to the board just to hold it down, so it's nice and flat. One leg here. That seems good enough. So again, make sure that the key is out this way, black arrow there to the white arrow on the board. Again, facing that way. So I'm going to attempt to turn these two over. Try to keep it nice and flat. Yeah, those are good. I've got another power one. I've also got this MIDI plus USB. Now the MIDI plus USB is a 2x5. Now that is this that I had in my other bag. So that's interesting. Now they're all in there a little bit delicately because they're only on a single leg at the moment. Now these are the last two. So single leg. Yeah, that's all those on there. So what I'll do the rest of that soldering, and I'll see you afterwards. Okay, like before, the Molex connector going on the edge of the board at J2. Oh, these little headers. Get to those in a minute, I suspect. But this just goes here, facing out of the board. Right, sorry to interrupt, it's future me here, just to point out that I did something wrong at this point. I missed something. I missed all of these little white headers that should go on the board now before you put the audio I/O on, because if you do what I did and miss that bit out and then do it later, you'll find that they're quite a struggle to put in because everything else is big around it, so they fall out when you turn it upside down. So if you're following the manual correctly, at this point you put in these white headers as I'm about to now, but you will notice that I already have these bits in, and you want to put all of these bits in after. Does that make sense? Good. So hopefully I've gone back in time and told you to do this bit now, as opposed to when I'm doing it, which is when the rest of it is done. So yours is not hopefully going to look like this. You're just going to have the power connectors on, not all of this rigmarole, and then you're going to put these lovely little white things on, because I completely missed it. So there's one here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 there, and this provides connection to some other thing with some jumpers. I think, if I'm right, there are certain modules that have these sorts of things on the back, IntelliGel ones particularly, in their own format, to bring you to audio outputs or CV outputs and inputs, and to MIDI. So I believe that's the reason for these bits. And this is going to be a pain. This is going to be painful. Sorry about that. I hope you're not having the same experience I am, because hopefully, as I say, I would have told you to do this earlier. So what am I going to do? How am I going to hold that in there? This, I might actually have to get into the hole using bits of tape. I'm assuming I've got that round the right way. I don't actually know which way round it goes. The line on the silkscreen matches the plastic latch. So the line, in that case, it seems to suggest that the line on that is matching up with the big white bit, in which case that goes that way around. So that's quite important. Quite important, I think. So I'm going to attempt to do this with a little bit of tape. I'm just gonna tape it down, just like that. Turn it over, see if I can solder it. Excellent. See, that worked a treat. A little bit of tape. Good, that's that one there. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I might have to do them one at a time. So again, the white plastic goes where the line is. How do I do those ones in there? I do not know. Not to worry. Stuff a bit of tape in. This is the least stickiest tape in the world, I think. Another one here, which is that way around. One like that. Lovely, that one stuck out a little bit. And there's a bit of on a wonk, but never mind. Okay, good. Those are in then. Those are in. Got that? You idiot. Honestly. Now we will proceed to solder the components. Oh yeah, solder the components that are aligned to the case to ensure these align to the PCB. To prevent fatal errors, you can only solder 2 pins on each connector and make sure these are aligned with the case holes. Solder all other pins when you've checked that it fits on the case first. Right, so this is going to get a little bit unwieldy because we have this large case to deal with. So I've got these jack connectors, and I've got USB and MIDI connectors here. They've all got to go on here. They've all got to align to the case. Tricky. So it's suggesting we put on the power connector first, which is this little thing here. On J1, which is here, it actually goes off the back of the board like that. Of course it does, because it has to line up with the back of the case. And then you've got 3 of these screw terminals, which is what I think these are. I think these are screw terminals. And these are B1, B2 and B3. And they go out facing the back. Looks like they push in quite nicely. Oh yeah, I like that a lot. And then we've got the USB ports. So the type B is USB 1. USB 1, which is there. USB 2 is the dual one, so I've got 2 sockets on it here. See, that's interesting, because that looks like we're going to be able to plug in MIDI controllers. Okay, they're all in really, really snug. And there's this horizontal one which goes, where does that go? Facing out, int USB. Internal USB here. Oh, okay, so this is a connection for something internally, which is going to go facing off the back side of the board. So that's obviously less important in terms of how does that work. That's good. Then there's jacks and the MIDI. I mean, maybe what I'll do is I'll just get all these bits in first, because obviously when I turn this upside down, that DC connector is going to fall out, because these are all taller than it. So that's a little bit silly. I should have thought about that first. I could pull this out potentially. Make it a little bit simpler. So let me just tag these in, particularly that DC connector. Do this front one, I think. So with that tagged in, let's put this here. That lines up nicely. Put this one back in. Let's solder all of those first. So I'm going to do a single pin on all of these USB bits and pieces and see whether that still fits. So this is one of these screw terminals. This is a USB. Over here, one of these terminals. Right, so those are momentarily tagged in. So the idea is we're just trying to line this up against the back of the case here to make sure that those are correct as much as possible. I think I need to put the other bits in order to make this properly work, because the thing with these is that these are going to poke through, and that's going to be very helpful. So jacks and MIDI connectors. So these are the jacks. Do they all need these screws on? Not entirely sure, because they might want to be red at the moment, but with the screw on, it's not going to come through the hole, so that's going to have to come off. Don't know whether it needs the washer or not at this particular point, but these are all the same, and these just go in along here. And the MIDI, these are all the same also, and these look like they butt up against it as opposed to poke through. So probably the most important thing is going to be the jacks ultimately, because they're going to dictate how everything else sits. So we're going to have to do all of these, going to have to tag all of these in, and then check that it aligns. That's the key at this point. So hopefully with some half decent soldering, did that work? It might just work. See, this is not very level. It's not feeling very good at this particular point. How can I make these more rigid? Because these need to pull up. So I think these MIDI connections are too high. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the MIDI ones out for the moment. Just focus on the jacks. Now because they're sort of rounded topped, that's making this a little bit tricky. Oops. So let's try that over again. See, that's better. That's better. I can push that all the way down to the ground now. It does bend away from itself a little bit. So it's going to be requiring a little bit of pushing down. So I think when they talk about 2 pins, they're probably talking about the front 2 pins. We could do that. We could try that. So I've got this down so that it's flush. That's in. I'm just going to do one for the minute. Same with this one. Last one. So if that's all fairly aligned, everything else should be. He says. Pretty good. Let's try the MIDI. So with these, they have an opportunity to be well wobbly, I would say. All over the place, goodness gracious. So yeah, the MIDI ones are the trickiest by the looks of things. How can I get this to work better? Maybe what I'll do is I'll do one. So you need this up, but it just rocks badly. So we need that to be pushed back against there. Alright, so if I push it back, it needs to be flush is what it needs to be. It needs to be pushed right up against it. And that's quite hard because it's this bit here is poking out, poking up. So as you're rocking it, it's a little bit, it's just difficult because this is the thing that you're standing everything on, and you want it to be as flat at the back as possible. If I use anything squishy, it's not necessarily going to be flat. I need it to feel that it's completely flat. So I need it to rock against that like that. Alright, so this is a little bit of a challenge, I think. So where are we? So what I can do is I think I'm going to try to solder this middle leg. Just going to give it a bunch of solder. I'm going to hold it there and then rock it and hold it down so it's as straight as possible. And when that's dried, solidified, see, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Not too I think it's fairly flat, fairly straight. I think I might go for that. So this one similarly, hold the soldering iron on it, and then see, I want it to line up with that other one like that. I don't know, is that right? Could be. Right, let's just crack on with the third one, see whether we can get there. A load of solder on and then attempt to get it as flush with the others as possible. So as I look along there, I'm just trying to make sure that all of these come through. I mean, there's plenty of room for the MIDI, so I didn't really need to fuss quite so much for those MIDI ports because there's plenty of room around them. They're not going to get snagged. Provided these jacks are through, you can see the screw holes here and the power connectors coming through, and that holds it there. Just got to be aware of these USB ports, make sure that those are aligned so that you could be able to get your cable in. That's the key thing. And I think those look all right to me. It's a little tricky. It is tricky because particularly if you're working in a small space like I am here, I'm trying to get all these bits to fit so you can see what you're doing. But I think that's pretty good. I mean, assuming that you solder it everything nice and flush, so that means flat to the board, then it should just work. So I've done all the tagging. I now need to solder all the way across so that they're all in there nice and solidly, and hopefully not bending them in any weird direction while I'm doing that. That's the plan. I will see you at the other end. So there we are, one I/O board. Pretty stunning, lots of ins and outs and things. Makes you wonder about many things. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet, so I'm not supposed to understand it all. So, right. Power switch, cable and socket. Right, this is my favourite thing. He says, unconvincingly. Right, so that must be this last bag of stuff here, which has got all the grizzly power bits in. I've still got all of my jack washes, and I've still got these little white power connectors too, or these white headers for something or other. Ooh, that's nice and chunky. Look at that, crikey blimey! And this thing here, I get the feeling I've got some wizardry happening. Apparently we don't need the blue wire, so you can just cut that off. Like, just cut it off. It seems odd to me, but hey, let's do that. That way it's out of the way, you're not having to worry about it. And the rest of them fit in the edge of here somewhere. You've got to make sure you get them in the right colours. So you've got these funny ends on them. Is that just to protect the ends? So run the cables through the holes and solder. You can tin the wires to make this easier. So I mean, maybe they go as they are, and it's just a way of helping you guide them through the holes. Maybe that's the plan. Black, red, green, yellow. They're labelled on here, so they go up through there, down through there, soldered underneath. Alright, that doesn't look too hard. So black at the top. It's not too hard, he says. Doesn't know what he's doing. Yellow at the bottom, black there, green and red. That's right. Those are all right. That's completely right. So I'm going to come up a nice long way, and then now that I've got those through, I can then take the ends off. I'm going to give them a little twist. So that's going to just brilliantly, because it's all perfectly done, it's just going to poke through there. No, you see, there's always a wire. There's always a wire sticking out. Okay, so what I should be doing, see, if I was doing this properly, is that I would tin it, which just means to put some solder on it to hold it all together. But then also doing that, it can make little globules stick out. Globules, you say? Yeah, globules. Is that one in? And that one's a complete mess. Come on. It's so nearly there. Yes. Okay. So those are all in. And I can solder them all in. The important thing is they're not touching each other. I think that's probably the most important thing. So I might have to do a little bit of snipping once they're soldered. Nice. Right, so where are we? We've finished our I/O board. Gorgeous, lovely, super. It's going to go in the back of the case. And we've finished our power board here, hopefully, assuming I haven't broken it. These two things are going to be related in some way. Good Lord, look at the unevenness of that lot. That's just fantastic. It's a work of art, that is. You can see all the character. It's going to add extra character to the power and audio signals going through the system, which is nice. So I recommend it, being a little bit wayward. It's a bit bendy. So we are at the stage of putting the case together, which is very exciting. So all this is going to go in the case. Then we're going to be sticking on the rails. And then we'll be able to use it by sticking modular in it, which is, of course, is the thing we're trying to get to at the end. Oh, look, feet, screws, things, bits and pieces. Good, we're nearly there. So next up is the assembly. I'm going to go and take a bit of a break at this point and come back and do this later. Right, I'm back. It's now another day, and we'll continue with our build of the case, and with a bit of luck, assemble the thing. So this is rather exciting. So first thing we have to do is install the power switch, the rather nice power switch, which goes at the back of the case right here. So it says place the power switch on it and secure it with a provided hex nut. Now I'm going to take a stab here that this hex nut needs to go on the inside. Like so. That's quite beautiful. Lovely. So now you've got to put the I/O board in. Right, so that's this thing here. So this is going to have to mount in the back in some way. So it says remove the nuts and keep the washers on. So I've removed all of that. A moment, so let me refind all those bits. So what Befaco have given you is a bunch of both black and red nuts for the jacks out the back. And what's interesting about that is that the idea is that these jacks can be whatever you want them to be. They can be audio ins, they can be audio outs, they can be CV in or CV out. It all depends on what modules you connect them to. Now this isn't going to become immediately clear because I don't really know how to use this and how it works and how it all integrates with each other until I've put it together. But I can show you a tiny bit, sort of a preview now as I'm understanding it. So this is one of their 1U modules, the ST amp, and that has an internal connection on this little ribbon. So this is an amplifier for amplifying external signals to Eurorack level. So this particular one's got a stereo input here, And what I could do is plug a synth into here, and then I've got an output to run through my modular. But with this little cable, I can plug that into some of the jacks here, and they become the inputs for my synth. So they become on the back. So my synth plugs in the back, and it emerges here. It's quite brilliant. This is the whole sort of the genius behind the IntelliJ 1U system, which is what Befaco is mirroring and totally compatible with. And this is something which is possible on a whole range of different modules, not just Befaco ones, but also IntelliJ and other people who support the format. So that's what this I/O board is all about. But we'll probably get deeper into that later on, or maybe even in another video. We will see. But where was I? I was talking about these nuts. So you might want to, is what I'm saying, label them up as red or black. It just depends on how you want to use them. Now the washers I took off, I'm going to have to discover those. So the washers are going to go on the inside. So remove the nuts, keep the washers on them, then fit the jacks in the holes and fast the first one. Fast the first one? I know what it means. I know what they mean. So at this end I'm going to put in a black one. Can I do that without looking? Yeah, I think I can. Alright, so that's that one tightened up. Then make sure everything is aligned. So that's going there. Need to get the power thing in. That's looking pretty good. And then fit the screws. Right, I've got some quite big chunky ones. I've got a pair of headers, these spacers, those sorts of things. The rest of these screws all look to be about the same on annoying hex things, but hey, never mind. So I'm going to assume that these are what I want. They all do look the same. Let's see whether they fit. You do get a little Allen key. Yeah, that seems to be pulling that up. Nice, I'm not going to over tighten it. So one there, one here, there. So that's going in. What I will check is just those USB ports, because it will be super annoying to have to take this apart once I've actually got things plugged into it. Now that fits all right. The other end, perfect. And then inside we're going to need to connect this to the switch. So on the switch itself there's sort of three up the middle, and then there's 3 at one end. So if you look actually inside here, if I can get that in focus. Now I can see that some of the sockets or holes in there are have silvery stuff, which would indicate a connection, and a couple of them do not. So I'm going to put the bits from here and make sure that they match up with the bits there. That seems to make sense. And then that clips in rather nicely. What is a little bit harder is trying to get this hex nut to be as tight as possible. And then finally you finish off with your jacks. So I'm going to do a couple in, a few more out. Does that make sense? No, I don't know. Who knows? But let's do it like that. I have to keep these other jack nuts handy just in case I want to change it. But there we go. Look at that, MIDI out and through. I like the fact that it's printed both so you can see it from the back, and also you can see it when you lean over from the front. These numbers here, that's pretty smart. That's a little bit of thinking, that is. Now that seems strong enough and there enough. And there's nothing supporting this back edge of the board, so when I plug it in power things, I guess there's a possibility of bending going on, but it feels really really rugged, I have to say. So I'm not that worried about that at this stage. Good, very neat. Trolley bus. This is the trolley bus. Screw the spacers onto the central part holes. Do what now? Screw the spacers. So this is, let me bring this forward. This is evidently going to fit here, over the top of these studs. Now there's these two studs that came out of mine, which I have here. And these are going to have to fit in here from the other side. Let me just put those through for the moment. There. Okay, so they're currently in, but obviously they're only going to be fixed once I pull it against here. So I think what it could be saying is that these two spacers need to go on something. These two spacers here. So screw the spacers on the central part holes. Then place the grid PCB over the DC regulators and screw it into the spacers. Right, what we're talking about is this here. This is what we're talking about. This is supposed to go here because it gets hot. Yeah, good idea. And I've got two of these. Should I have more of those? Let me check. Just in case they're hiding in the box. No. Because there seems to be 4 holes. I've got 2 of these. I think that's going to be enough for this, from this my situation here. You may have 4 of these, I do not know. But what I'm going to go with, putting one of these here. On top of that. And putting another one on this side here. And then this fits over the top and screws down. I'm assuming that there would be one there and one there as well, but I don't have those, so I'm not going to worry about it. So now this connects here. I am going to have to connect this cable. I'm just thinking to myself, am I doing this the right way round? Would it matter if it's this way round? And actually, yes, it would, because this cable then is not going to reach. So yeah, it should be this way round. So I'm looking at this in the right way. So I just need another 6 screws, and that's going to pull that together. Now, funnily enough, I only have enough screws to do exactly what I'm doing. So if there were an extra 2 spacers for the little grill, then I wouldn't have screws for them either. Just a thought, so maybe I have it exactly right. Good. Now this looks like it's the same either way. So I just plug one end in there. The other end in there. Smash in. That's all lovely. Good, good. Well, it's looking pretty impressive at this stage. Okay, now it's time. It's time for the rails. Ooh. So all threaded, which is nice if you like that sort of thing. I think most people do. So what's the plan? What's the plan with this then? So what it says, 4 rails included, 2 singles and 2 doubles. Also 3. There are also 6 thread stripes. What's a thread stripe? I think they mean threaded strips. First of all, fit the strips in the rails. They will be placed inside by default. Okay. Place 2 single rails on the lower and upper sides. The face with the groove should face the chassis of the box. Be gentle, aligning the rails in case they can be easily marked. Okay, so that's a double one. That's a single. So I guess right, okay, so looking at this chassis bit here, you've got a groove on one side, which is what they're referring to. I was expecting to find a lip on the top. There actually isn't a lip on the top, which is interesting. So place 2 single rails on the lower and upper sides. The face with the groove should face the chassis. So it should go, if you're with me, should go against there like that. It's just not quite fitting in there. Just by a hair's breadth. Okay, a little bit of persuasion. That seems to go in and down. Okay, because what's going to happen is you'll use the case itself as the lip. That's what's going to happen. So I've got one there, another single with the groove facing the chassis. Oops, it does scratch rather if you're not careful, but then that is the inside, so that's not the end of the world. Okay, secure it with some of these enormous screws, I think. I've got to make sure that's lined up, which is a little bit tricky. It comes through about there. I think what I'm going to have to do is stand this up on its edge to see if I can get that right. How does it attach? So I've got an edge here. Does it screw into that bit? I don't have anything else. So it must do. Okay, so once you give it a little bit of persuasion, it starts to go in. Try this one here to do the same. So you can see sort of the teeth of it in there, because it's not as I showed on this end. It's not a round screw thread you're trying to get into there. It's something a little bit stranger than that, a little bit like a cross. So it feels a bit odd, doesn't feel like you can do it with your fingers. I found, once I started winding it, that it finds its way. Right, I'm not going to do that all the way just at the minute, or am I? Well, they look okay. They look okay, I think. Because if I stand it up on that side, I'm going to be standing it up on those screws that are sticking out, and that's not going to work very well. So maybe I'm just going to go for it. Go all the way. Good. Rails in. Now, then place the dual rails on the wanted places. There are two configurations, with a 1 HP row with a 1U row at the top, or in the middle. Don't tighten the rails before check placing some modules. It's a bit late for that, isn't it? Right, so basically I have to choose where I want this to go. I can put it up here in order to give me the 1U row there, and then 2 lots of, like so, and then 2 lots of modular there, 2 lots of 3U there, or I can place this in the middle, having a 1U in the middle, and then having 3U either side. So this, if you think of the make noise shared system, that's how that operates. You've got this shared bus in the middle that has all sorts of things going on. The IntelliGel is like that. So you've got the 1U utility row at the top. Now having it at the top makes some sense because you've got all of these connectors down here that you might want to connect things to. So if I find my little this fella again. So having that there makes sense because I can easily connect it to the output bus here if I can get my fingers through. See, is that so important now I'm thinking about it? Because if this is here, can I actually access that very easily enough to do a thing? Because I'm thinking that if I have it here on this side of things, I'm going to have to take out modules in order to get to this. But I might have to do that anyway because it's fiddly getting through 1U. It's actually not very wide at all. So maybe that's not a factor. The other factor that I have to consider is where do I want to put this? Look at that. It's a 1U motion meter. Now would that be awesomer in the middle of the case, or awesomer at the top or the bottom? I feel that the middle is the place for it. I do. I just really think that's going to give you the best use of it because it can go in both directions. So I think I'm going to go for the middle just to be different. So that's exciting, and I'll show you that working in a little bit. So I made the decision. You've got all the holes at the side, so this one is going to go here. This one here. I wonder if I can stand it up without it all falling apart. It's all spinning round. Needs to go through there. That's the only place it can go. Let me just try another screw. Is it supposed to go into here? I mean, are they self-tapping? Is that the problem, that they're having to make their own way and biting into the metal? Alright, it's moving. I got it in there. Just got to keep trying. I think is the answer. It's really stiff, but it is starting to go in now. Ow! I did try to find an electric screwdriver that had the right bit on it, but I don't have the right bit. See, if these had just been Phillips, that would have been a bit easier. But no, it's got to be a bleeding Allen key, isn't it? God darn it. Alright. So I'm going to need to straighten that up. And as the man says, don't put them in too tight because you want to check them with modules first. So yeah, these I've not put together a case before. So I'm not familiar with how these things are necessarily supposed to work, so I'm guessing that doesn't have a screw thread inside. Exactly. You are taking this screw and that is biting its way through the metal. That's my assumption at this point. So you just need to really lean into it, is what I'm saying. And sort of holding that in while holding the screw, while leaning into it, seemed to give some kind of success. God, it is really hard though. Jam it in there. Go on. God, this is awful. Oh my goodness, Befaco. I hope I'm not doing this wrong. Oh, my hands. My hands. Ouch. Oh, flipping it. Right. Okay, so those are mostly screwed, but obviously still very loose. Because I need to place some modules. So let me put in the awesome motion meter. Use it as a template. And let's put in some other modules. Spookily, I just happen to have a bunch of Befaco modules to hand, but that's not on purpose. Let's get a nice chunky one. Make sure that sits in. Yeah. Yeah, in fact there's a little bit of give, I would say, which is no bad thing. Good. So I think I can tighten it all up. That's my plan at this point. I think it's quite important that you make the right decision as to where you want to put the 1 euro beforehand, so you don't ever have to take it apart again. Okay, this is looking fantastic, I have to say. It's really rigid now, quite heavy. Makes me wonder about the portability of it, but I'm not going to dwell on that at the moment. These things are always trade-offs. So you've got these feet. Place the 4 rubber feet on the outer holes, at bottom press the centre to secure the legs. So they go in like that. And I push it. And that's in. And there are 4 of those. Excellent. Excellent. Do not connect any module to this bus before testing it. The case needs a minimum of 120 watt power supply. Center positive, power up, 3 LEDs should light. There are testing points on each one. Measure that you have the relevant voltages in each test point. Right. So it came with a power supply, this chunky fella here. But I would much rather it is this sort of power supply rather than an internal one, because those are just scary. This just keeps all of the high voltages away and means that we're just getting, you know, a sensible amount of volts into the case, not an enormous amount. Now it's on a kettle lead, which makes me wonder about earthing noise, but I'm not going to worry about that too much at the minute. Plugs in there. Okay, got a green light on my power supply, and then button on the back. Nice red light. That's rather nice. That's rather nice. More importantly, look at those LEDs. 1, 2, 3, 4 LEDs. Oh yes, I might have made it work. Now, talking about test points, you've got ground and you've got things labelled here. So, heck, let's try that out. So this should be -12. Yeah. +5. Yeah. +12. Yeah. +12. Yeah. So that appears to have tested out fine. If they're not lit, well, they bloody are. Enjoy your new Befaco module. Thank you very much. Super then, got it to work, didn't I? Yes, I did. Got everything plugged in. Gosh, those rails were tricky, but it all seems to be there now. Nice. Nice in the black and red. I enjoy that tremendously. That switch is nice too. Should remember to turn it off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick a load of modular into the case, including the completely fabulous Molten Motion Meter 1U 4x1U thing, which is rather special. Plug all that in and I'll show you what it looks like at the end. So after a great deal of deliberation and changes and swaps and then other swaps here, oh, there's an early, is a completed case load of modular. Look at that, it's pretty smart. It's pretty damn smart. And this is the first time I've actually had a chance to play with the 1U motion meter, which is great. I've got all sorts of stuff in here which are mostly new to me because I'm going to do reviews of them, like the 3-body. This crazy on earth is that thing there, the particles, the zaps, the error instruments nonsense along here. Lots of fun to be had. Now I've got this one wired into some inputs on the back, and this output module here wired to those outputs on the back. So that's interesting. I'm not going to go into a full case demo at this point. I'm just pointing those bits out. But it is really interesting in how the different shape is slightly strange, and this strip feels slightly strange being there. But I'm like well into it. The other thing is that there's sort of no edge, no bezel. Do you know what I mean? So there's no wooden sides on it. So unlike my case from Lake, which I've cannibalized over here, yeah, it's got this great big orange piece of wood going all the way around it and a handle. It's actually of a similar size because of the bezel, similar height, except the Befaco has no edging on it at all. It's almost completely flush, and that's very, very interesting. But we're not done yet. No, we're not done yet. It's just one more thing, and that is this. Oh my goodness. It has a VESA compatible on the back, so you can sit it up on a monitor arm in order to have it wherever you could possibly want it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's extraordinary. I mean, obviously set it up exactly how you want it to be. I mean, probably with this arm at the back of your desk rather than the front. Who knows? But wow. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, of course, the question is, will it stand something being plugged into it? That's the question. I don't know yet, because I'm going to have to work with it a bit. I mean, obviously, I can tighten this up so that it's rigid where I need it to be, or more rigid. Otherwise, I guess you're just holding onto the side a little bit. See what happens with that. So that, my friends, is a build of the Befaco 7U case. It's nice, it's nice. It's a beautiful thing. I've never built a case before as such. I've modded one a bit, but that was quite interesting. Building the power supply and stuff, it's all relatively straightforward. Follow the instructions. I think after I've gone through it, the instructions will probably be that little bit clearer, which is good for everybody, really. But I hope it was helpful as I stepped my way through it. Screwing these side things in, which is a bit of a bugger, but hey, we got there in the end. I'm kind of liking the 1U strip in the middle at the moment. I think that's interesting. I am now desperate to get my teeth into this little setup of modular. I don't know whether it's right yet. You're never really quite sure until you start working with it. I mean, obviously these are fantastic here, these Aero Instruments bits and pieces, you know. There's so much coolness out of that. Yes. Yes. And other percussive things I'm going to be getting interested in. Got to work out how I'm going to get everything out of here. Will the inputs and outputs at the top, are they going to work easily for me going through here? Yeah, probably. But I'm going to sit down and work all that out. And you should see this case being used in most of my demos in the future. See, I wonder if I can get it over there. Then it could go up against the wall. And then, which clears this space. And then I can bring it in. Oh, it's just the possibilities, man. The possibilities of that simple thing. I mean, these aren't that expensive. A little bit expensive. And funnily enough, I'd got this for my monitor, but I thought I would try this out first to see whether this is worthwhile. And core blimey, it is. Just brilliant. Totally brilliant. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Is that everything I've got to tell you at the moment? Yeah, stay tuned for a proper introductory demo to the Molten Motion Meter 1U 4 knob, the 4 knobs or something. In the meantime, go make some tunes.